Alright, chat, we got. Hold on. We got. If all humans died, when would the last light go out? Let's find out. All this is down in the description to the socials. Let's get straight to it. Type say.
From Alan, who asks, This question comes from Alan, who asks, if every human somehow simply disappeared from the face of the Earth, how long would it be before the last artificial light source would go out? We'll start with the obvious. Most lights wouldn't last long because the major power grids would go down relatively quickly. Without people, there would be less demand for power, but our fridges and air conditioners and lava lamps would still be running. Fossil fuel plants, which supply the vast majority of the
The lava lamps would be huh?
The major power grids would go down relatively quickly. Without people, there would be less demand for power, but our fridges and air conditioners and lava lamps would still be running.
Oh, I misunderstood what he said.
Fossil fuel plants, which supply the vast majority of the world's electricity, require a steady supply of fuel, and their supply chains do involve people doing things. As coal and oil plants started shutting down in the first few hours, other power sources would get hit with that extra load. This kind of situation is difficult to handle even with human guidance, and the result would be a rapid series of cascading failures leading to a blackout of all the major power grids. Nuclear reactors, of course, don't require a steady supply of fuel. One reactor operator I talked to said,
You know, when I hear the term nuclear reactor, it does nothing but like raise or like nuclear energy. Like I'm not fully educated on that topic, but just the word nuclear does not sound good.
that if their core settled into low power,
I mean, other than like the nuclear family, like that's a little bit different story. But I'm still interested about where that term came from. But the term nuclear, when I hear that shit. Fuck.
mode, it could continue running almost indefinitely. A cube of uranium contains about 6 million times as much stored energy as a similar-sized cube of coal. Unfortunately, although there's enough fuel, most nuclear reactors wouldn't keep running for long. As soon as something went wrong, the core would go into automatic shutdown. Every part of a reactor control system is designed so that a failure causes it to rapidly shut down. This would happen quickly. Many things can trigger a shutdown, but the most likely culprit would be the failure of the power grid. However, plenty of light comes from sources not tied to the major power grids. Let's take a look at a few of those and when each one might turn off.
Because windmills are fucking pointless.
Many remote communities, like those on far-flung islands, get their power
windmills are so fucking pointless
from diesel generators.
There's
These
so
can
much
run until
better
their tanks
ways
run
of,
out of
like efficiently producing power.
Get their power from diesel generators. These can run until their tanks run out of fuel, which in most cases could be anywhere from days to months. Off-grid generating stations that don't need a human-provided fuel supply would be in better shape. Geothermal plants can run for a fair bit of time without human intervention. According to the maintenance schedule for the Svartsengi Island geothermal plant in Iceland, every 6 months the operators must change the gearbox oil and re-grease all electric motors and couplings. Without humans to perform these sorts of maintenance procedures, some plants might run for a few years, but they'd all succumb to corrosion eventually. Lights relying on wind power would last a bit longer.
Yeah, I don't even think they produce like a decent amount of like electricity or some shit. They're kind of like pointless. Like there's so many better ways.
Turbines are designed so that they don't need constant maintenance for the simple
I know they're fucking professional or like scientists or some shit. Whatever the fuck it is. Nuclear family, they call it that because they're toxic.
Reason that there are a lot of them and they're a pain to climb. The Gedser wind turbine in Denmark was installed in the late 1950s and it generated power for 11 years without maintenance. Modern turbines are typically rated to run for 3 years without servicing, and there are no doubt some which would run for decades. And one of them would probably have at least a status LED in it somewhere. Eventually most of the wind turbines would be stopped by the same thing that would destroy the geothermal plants. Their gearboxes would seize up. Generators that convert falling water into electricity will also keep working. An operator at the Hoover Dam once said that if everyone walked out, the facility would continue to run on autopilot for several years. Though, if the power grid is down, all that electricity would have nowhere to go. In the end, the dam would probably succumb to clogged intakes or the same kind of mechanical failure that hit the wind turbines and geothermal plants. Battery-powered lights wouldn't fare much better and would all be off within a few dozen years. Even without anything using their power, batteries eventually self-discharge. Some types last longer than others, but even batteries advertised.
I'm waiting for the day when China or some fucking country comes out with a fucking battery that is so damn small. Which I've heard about shit like this though. But like, imagine a battery is so damn small that like you can put it in damn near anything, right? And it has so much power and it recycles its own power, so it's unlimited. $1 trillion idea.
Advertisers having long shelf lives typically only hold their charge for a decade or two. Solar power is probably the
Wait, hold on. I need to look up what type of batteries are Teslas. What type of batteries are Teslas? Lithium, it's these ones.
For a decade or two.
Okay,
Solar power is probably the most promising candidate. There are many off-grid solar-powered buildings, weather stations, and other remote infrastructure around the world. Emergency call boxes, often found along the side of the road in remote locations,
Hot. Population 0, Rhode Island.
are frequently solar-powered. They usually have lights on them, which
Rhode
provide illumination every night. Like wind turbines, they're hard to service, and so they're built to last for a long time. Solar panels will generally last as long as the electronics connected to them, and as long as the panels are kept free of dust and debris. The wires and circuits will eventually succumb to corrosion, but solar panels in a dry place with well-built electronics could easily continue providing power.
Space submarines? That shit breaks my brain. A submarine is underwater, but there's no water in space. Well, actually, I don't know that, but not in our observable shit, whatever the fuck. That's like a contradiction. My brain.
Power for a century if they're kept free of dust by occasional breezes or rain on the exposed panels. If we follow a strict definition of lighting, solar-powered lights in remote locations could conceivably be the last surviving human light source. But there's another contender, and it's a weird one. Spent nuclear fuel. Contrary to popular portrayals, radioactivity isn't usually visible, which is part of why we need warning signs around areas with radioactive materials or waste. Sure, watch dials used to be coated in small amounts of radium to help them glow in the dark, but the glow didn't come from the radioactivity itself. It came from the phosphorescent paint on top of the radium, which glows when it's irradiated. Once the phosphorescent paint breaks down, the watch dials are still radioactive but no longer glow. Watch dials, however, are not our only radioactive light source. When radioactive particles travel through materials like water or glass, they emit light through a sort of optical sonic boom. This light is called Cherenkov radiation, and it's seen in the distinctive blue glow of nuclear reactor cores. Some of our radioactive waste products, such as cesium-137, are melted and mixed with glass, which cools into...
You know what? Shout out physicians. Shout out physicians. Shout out people who are affiliated with the science community. Cause I don't understand any of this shit. I just finished taking like biology last semester. But yeah, it was the first time taking biology since 9th fucking grade. Took it at the college I go to. And bro, I don't remember. Hell nah.
Into a solid block before being wrapped in more shielding for transport and storage. And in the dark, these glass blocks glow blue. Cesium-137 has a half-life of 30 years, which means that two centuries...
People in the community of science.
Cesium-137 has a half-life of 30 years, which means that 2 centuries later, the blocks will still be glowing.
I'm going to say this, I'm not a science major. I'm going to just say that about biology. I passed, did my thing. Simple.
1% of their original radioactivity. Since the color of the light depends only on the particle decay energy and not the amount of radiation, it will fade in brightness over time, but keep that same blue color. And thus, we arrive at our answer. Centuries from now, deep in concrete vaults, the light from our most toxic waste will still be shining.
So toxic waste will be the last to go out. Okay. Interesting video. Thank y'all for watching. On to the next one.